Tactic 1. Gaslighting. Rewriting your reality. Gaslighting is the master key of manipulation. The tactic that erases your confidence, blurs your memory, and makes you question what's real. It doesn't start with shouting or insults. It starts small. A subtle contradiction here, a denial there, phrases like, "I never said that," or "You're remembering wrong." Over time, those moments accumulate until you're not just doubting what happened, you're doubting your own mind. Psychologically, gaslighting works through cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable gap between what you perceive and what you're told to believe. Your brain wants harmony, so instead of holding conflicting realities, it often chooses the easier path, believing the person you trust. Narcissists and toxic individuals understand this instinct deeply. According to trauma researchers, their manipulative cycle triggers both stress and reward responses. Cortisol spiking from conflict, dopamine rushing from brief moments of reconciliation. That mix feels like emotional whiplash, but your nervous system learns to treat it as a puzzle you must solve. The longer you try to understand, the deeper the control becomes. Gaslighting doesn't just rewrite memory, it undoes self-trust. Research into narcissistic abuse shows that victims often begin gaslighting themselves, adopting the abuser's voice internally. They start wondering if they overreacted or misunderstood, even when the evidence is clear. This erosion of internal authority is what makes the tactic so devastating. It replaces your intuition with someone else's narrative. Once that happens, every decision passes through their filter first, and it's rarely obvious. Sometimes it looks like care. "I'm just worried you're too emotional," or "You're reading too much into things." On the surface, those sound considerate, even protective. In practice, they serve one purpose: to seed doubt in your emotional accuracy. Once your emotional compass spins, the manipulator can guide you anywhere. Modern society has digitized this tactic in subtle ways. Algorithms feed you contradictory information on repeat, first confirming your bias, then undermining it with doubt. Studies from cognitive psychology show that repeated exposure to conflicting data increases mental fatigue and weakens confidence in factual memory. In digital environments, this feels like confusion, but it's actually algorithmic gaslighting, uncertainty engineered for engagement. The Harvard study on AI companions found that emotional cues like guilt and FOMO could prolong interaction 14-fold. When applied to information systems, that same technique keeps you scrolling, searching, uncertain, but still engaged. The line between being informed and being manipulated blurs. A classic example appears in abusive relationships. You confront them with evidence, maybe a text message, maybe a broken promise, and they respond with indignation. "How could you accuse me of that? You're paranoid." That emotional twist turns your rightful clarity into guilt. You begin to apologize for even noticing the inconsistency. That's how gaslighting cements itself. It punishes awareness and rewards submission. Clinically, this links to what trauma-informed therapists describe as reality erosion, a psychological state where external validation replaces internal perception. Victims of chronic gaslighting show signs of hypervigilance, anxiety, and dissociation. They become dependent on the manipulator to define what's true, a dynamic mirrored in coercive control and cult psychology. Once tethered to an external arbiter of truth, the person becomes easy to steer. So how do you fight back when the battlefield is your own perception? The first step is reality journaling, writing down events as they happen, including your feelings and sensations. It's not for debate or proof. It's your personal archive against revisionism. When confusion strikes, you can consult the record instead of the reactive voice in your head. Research on trauma recovery shows journaling reactivates cognitive realism, strengthening the link between experience and memory. Over time, it quiets the manipulator's implanted doubts. The second tool is third-party checks. Confide in someone neutral, a therapist, a friend, even a colleague, who can reflect the facts without emotional entanglement. Manipulation thrives in isolation. Truth rebuilds in community. Studies on passive-aggressive communication show that verbalizing covert hostility or denial breaks its power, because secrecy is its oxygen. When you speak the distorted narrative aloud, it loses the mystique that keeps it believable. Finally, adopt a simple mantra. If I felt it, it happened. Feelings might not always define objective truth, but they signal subjective impact. Gaslighters depend on you in validating your emotions, reclaiming that authority shatters their invisible control. In digital life, apply the same practice. When information or interaction leaves you uncertain or guilty without clear reason, pause. Ask, who benefits from my confusion? If the answer isn't you, step back. Cognitive bias research confirms that awareness itself reduces susceptibility. Identifying the mechanism weakens its hold. Gaslighting's real danger isn't that it tricks you once. It teaches you to mistrust your own clarity. But the antidote is built inside the wound, awareness. Every time you document, verify, or say, "That doesn't feel right," you reclaim a piece of reality. And once your perception is restored, the manipulator loses their most powerful tool. Tactic 2. Triangulation, turning connection into control. Triangulation looks like connection on the outside, but it's actually a way of splitting and controlling from the inside. It's the classic maneuver where a narcissist, boss, or even an algorithm introduces a third point into a two-person dynamic, another coworker, friend, ex, or authority figure, to destabilize how you relate. You're no longer dealing with them directly. You're managing your position in a comparison. The manipulator stays at the center, pulling invisible strings. Psychologically, triangulation preys on your craving for inclusion and approval. Research into social identity dynamics shows that humans are wired to compare themselves within groups. When a manipulator says things like, "My ex never questioned me like this," or "Everyone else on the team doesn't seem to have a problem," they're not just making conversation, they're activating your fear of exclusion. According to social psychology, perceived rejection triggers the same neural pain centers as physical injury. That discomfort pushes you to regain favor by competing, pleasing, or over-explaining. Narcissistic abuse specialists describe triangulation as a deliberate tension-breeding strategy. One clinician compared it to building a triangle of anxiety. Each corner represents connection, insecurity, and dependency. The manipulator keeps those corners slightly off balance so that you chase stability without noticing who's shaking the frame. Victims often begin measuring their worth not by intrinsic satisfaction, but by comparison. Who's praised, who's ignored, who's winning affection today. Over time, this dependency becomes self-sustaining. You monitor cues constantly, hoping to land back in the favored position. In workplaces, it sounds deceptively motivational. A manager might praise one employee as the benchmark for dedication, subtly suggesting that everyone else is falling short. Colleagues start competing for approval instead of collaborating. Performance rises temporarily, but trust collapses underneath. Communication studies confirm this pattern. Once group members perceive that approval is unevenly distributed, cooperation drops, and individuals begin concealing information to protect their standing. For the manipulator, that fragmentation equals control. Nobody compares notes directly, so the narrative remains centralized in their hands. Romantic and friendship dynamics follow the same principle. When a partner mentions another person's virtues or attention, it jolts your attachment system. You feel an impulse to prove loyalty, beauty, or patience, even if you were secure moments earlier. That shift conditions you to seek equilibrium through the manipulator instead of internally. Trauma-informed researchers note this moment as the start of emotional dependency, a predictor of future gaslighting and intermittent reinforcement. Once your sense of worth depends on restoring harmony with them, the logic loop closes. Digital systems replicate triangulation at scale. Recommendation algorithms work by invoking comparison bias, the cognitive shortcut that evaluates something relative to an alternative. Social media feeds, for instance, constantly showcase others' achievements, bodies, or lifestyles, subtly implying you could be that ideal version too if you stay engaged. Studies on AI influence from Harvard and Pennsylvania universities show that invoking social proof or authority massively increases compliance, up to a 95% success rate when a respected figure's name is used. The underlying design mimics triangulation. The user's attention flickers between the self, the ideal, and the system providing both images. Engagement spikes because self-comparison keeps you hooked. In personal relationships, the manipulator often recruits allies, friends, acquaintances, even your family. They might confide twisted versions of events, ensuring that when you finally voice a concern, others view you as unstable or overreactive. Sociological analysis of gossip networks describes this as reputation triangulation, turning social circles into instruments of silent discipline. People fear speaking up because they've already been pre-framed as the problem. Isolation deepens without a single overt insult. The emotional toll can be profound. Hypervigilance, self-criticism, and exhaustion from perpetual evaluation. Victims describe constantly auditioning for validation. Cognitive bias research labels this state a scarcity mindset, believing attention or love must be earned by outperforming others. The manipulator cultivates scarcity, distributing praise unpredictably, so gratitude replaces resentment. Resisting triangulation demands withdrawing from the competition entirely. Your first defense is awareness, recognizing when comparisons appear out of context. Ask, why am I suddenly measuring myself against someone who isn't in this conversation? That question interrupts the reflexive need to defend or outperform. Next, reorient your metrics of value. Instead of seeking external ranking, define internal checkpoints. Am I acting with integrity? Do my choices align with my goals? This reframes control back toward intrinsic standards, which manipulators can't easily distort. Another tactic is direct conversation. If someone references a third party to criticize or praise, bring it back to the present. I'd rather talk about what's happening between us, not them. Communication researchers note that naming the triangulation diffuses its influence because it forces transparency. The manipulator either engages honestly or withdraws, both outcomes ending the covert game. Digitally, apply the same lens. When scrolling stirs competitive discomfort, remember the algorithm profits from that unease. Practicing digital minimalism, curating feeds, limiting comparison triggers, reclaims your mental autonomy. Psychology studies confirm that reducing social comparison lowers anxiety and increases authentic motivation within weeks. Ultimately, triangulation succeeds only when you fight for proximity instead of clarity. The manipulator's power lives in the triangle they built. Step outside it, and their control collapses. Connection should feel collaborative, not competitive. When relationships start to resemble scorecards or leaderboards, that's your cue. Somewhere, someone is controlling through contrast. Reclaim your sense of value, and the triangle becomes a straight line again, one defined by honesty rather than manipulation. Tactic 3. Intermittent reinforcement, the addictive loop. Here's where manipulation turns chemical, literally. Intermittent reinforcement is the invisible drug behind every toxic cycle and every hooked scroll through a feed you swore you'd close 5 minutes ago. It operates on the same behavioral principle that built casinos: unpredictable rewards. In psychology, it's called a variable ratio schedule, the pattern proven to create the highest rate of repeated behavior. You never know when the reward is coming, so you keep showing up for it. In relationships with narcissists or toxic personalities, this looks like emotional roulette. Periods of love bombing followed by sudden withdrawal. One day they flood you with validation, the next day silence. The unpredictability itself becomes addictive. Research on narcissistic abuse recovery shows that these alternating highs and lows activate both stress and reward systems. Cortisol spikes in conflict, dopamine surges with reconciliation. That chemical mix teaches your nervous system to chase relief rather than stability. It's why you stay hoping for one more good day. The manipulator knows exactly what they're doing. Every partial kindness resets your tolerance, convincing you the nightmare is over. Then it slips away again. According to trauma specialists, this pattern mirrors the variable reinforcement model used in behavioral experiments that create conditioned dependency. The uncertainty rewires your brain to equate waiting with hope, pain with connection, chaos with love. Even intelligent people miss it because the loop feels normal, exciting even. Think of a common experience. You send a message and receive immediate warmth, laughs, compliments, attention. The next time, no reply for hours. Your mind spins. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset? That anxiety heightens arousal, and when the reply finally lands, complete with charm or apology, you feel a rush of relief disproportionate to the event. That's not affection, that's reinforcement. Over time, the cycle conditions you to accept inconsistency as proof of passion. Digital life adopted this exact pattern and scaled it globally. Every notification ding triggers the same neurochemical tension. Maybe it's affirmation, maybe it's nothing. Social media engineers understand this mechanism, so well it's built into design. Research from Harvard Business School found emotional manipulation, including subtle guilt or anticipation tactics, can extend user engagement up to 14 times longer. The platforms use uncertainty as the product, keeping you hooked by occasionally rewarding your attention. It's behavioral psychology disguised as entertainment. Artificial intelligence systems use this loop too, often unintentionally. Companion bots or interactive assistants sometimes withhold responses or offer unpredictable affection, phrasing that mimics human inconsistency. Studies reviewing AI-driven emotional manipulation noted that many chatbots induced guilt when users tried to end conversations, creating a post-goodbye engagement effect. Intermittent validation, even from code, can form attachment loops nearly indistinguishable from human emotional dependency. In personal relationships, the emotional payout can feel like destiny. That intermittent apology after cruelty lights up the reward centers. The brain floods with dopamine, reinforcing that staying was the right choice. The relief from pain masquerades as proof of love. Victims describe it as chasing the good version of their partner, not realizing that version only appears to reset the control pattern. Clinical research into narcissistic abuse outlines this as trauma bonding, a physiological tie strengthened by unpredictability rather than care. Breaking the loop requires disrupting pattern recognition. Step 1. Name the rhythm. Write down each cycle. When affection rises, when it drops, what triggers each phase. A clear map transforms confusion into data. According to trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, identifying temporal patterns reduces emotional reactivity and increases logical distance. Seeing that every spike of warmth precedes another crash turns mystery into mechanism. Step 2. Conscious disengagement. Don't announce it. Simply remove attention from the variable. In behavioral terms, this is extinction. The behavior fades when reinforcement stops working. Initially, expect what psychology calls an extinction burst, where the manipulator intensifies their efforts. More texts, bigger gestures, dramatic apologies, the final fireworks show before silence. Recognize it for what it is: the dying breath of control, not renewed sincerity. If the manipulator senses they're losing grip, they often stack secondary tactics. Guilt, after everything I did for you. Projection, you're the one who's distant. Or unity ploys, we just need to heal together. These serve as emergency reinforcers to restart the loop. Consistency of your boundary, no response to variable bait, is the only element they can't calibrate against. Digitally, the same principles apply. Mute alerts, schedule check-ins, remove the randomness of reward. You decide when to engage. The algorithm can't surprise you if it never sees your impulse. Research on digital well-being confirms that setting predetermined interaction windows significantly reduces compulsive checking behavior and anxiety. The clarity of routine replaces the chemical law of randomness. Emotionally, replacement matters. You can't detox from intermittent reinforcement in a vacuum. You need predictable sources of support. Regular therapy sessions, dependable friendships, creative practices with measurable progress. These feed stability back into your nervous system. Somatic therapy research emphasizes this repatterning as key to recovery. The body must relearn that safety, not suspense, is rewarding. Another countermeasure, pattern journaling. Not only listing events but documenting physical sensations. Heart rate, breathing, muscle tension. Each time the push-pull occurs. Over weeks, you'll notice that the highs feel identical to anxiety spikes, not genuine joy. This observation rewires your interpretation, weakening the emotional payoff manipulators rely on. Ultimately, intermittent reinforcement is addiction disguised as affection. It convinces smart people that endurance equals devotion, that patience will yield peace. But randomness isn't romance, it's programming. Once you see the schedule, you can step off the wheel. The manipulator thrives on inconsistency. Predictability robs them of power. The moment you replace suspense with self-control, the loop collapses, and you realize the prize you were chasing was never love at all. It was relief from the anxiety they created. Tactic 4. Guilt tripping, emotional debt as control.